say that this focus on development is not a very ancient thing. It's a relatively new thing, you know. Development was development and development theories, the need for development are of recent vintage, as they say. By recent vintage, I would mean about 100-year-old history they have, not more than that. Let us say you go back to 19th century. If you go back to 19th century and browse through the writings of economists, I wonder whether development was emphasized by them at all. Well, there was a population theory, there was a trade theory, there is a wage theory, the iron law of wages, etc., etc. But development theories, you know, you don't find enunciated in the 19th century, you know. So I would think that when we talk about development, we are talking about the last 100 years. There could be some stray references, you know. Someone may bring out some not known writer of the earlier years, but basically the development discourse is not more than 100 years old, in my view. And point two, I would think that the Soviet experiment has really given rise to this thrust on development. Let us say the 5-year planning, you know. The 5-year planning, and then some targeted growth in GDP or in per capita income. Now, these are all the outcome of the Soviet experiment, in my view. Earlier, people were worried about balance of payments, trade deficit, the tariffs, subsidies, but you don't find an emphasis on income growth or per capita income growth or national income growth as a target. In my view, I think this is all because of the Soviet experiment and the 5-year plan. So what happens nowadays, people talk about development theory as if this thrust on development has been there throughout the human history. That is not the case actually, not the case at all. But no one even knew what was the per capita income in the earlier centuries. Yeah? And of course, economists like Kuznets of United States and others, you know, they reconstructed national income data for the earlier centuries also, you know, particularly for the United States. That was really, you know, it is an intelligent guess as to what could have been the income in the earlier centuries, that kind of thing. So when you didn't have any notion about what the incomes were, there was no question of targeted income growth during that period.
Development aid is also something that comes from the United States. Like Truman actually founded the term underdeveloped. That it's coming like we have to help the poor, you know, like that you construct this.
After the Second World War. That's all after the Second World War. The Marshall Aid.
Yeah. Just economic,
yeah, the development aid. The 4-point program of President Truman. All these are post-Second World War. But I am going back to the Soviet Union and the Soviet experiment, means 1920s, you know. And yeah, there is no contradiction between what you said and what I said. You know? Yeah. In fact, as a result of the Soviet experiment, in India we had a national planning committee in the 1930s. That is before India became independent. India became independent in 1947. But the National Planning Committee was formed by the Indian National Congress in 1939. And so this was the direct impact of the Soviet experiment. You know, there was tremendous influence on the thinking of Indian leaders, which emanated from Soviet Union. The Soviets are doing this, and of course it was not known at that time that there was another side to what was going on in Soviet Union, the Stalinist purges and so forth and so forth. That was still not known. And so people were enamored of anything Russian, anything Soviet, until the late 1940s also. So the first experiment in planning, on thinking about planning, happened in India in the 1930s. And the National Planning Committee was succeeded by the Planning Commission of India when India became independent. India became independent in 1947, and the National Planning Commission, the official National Planning Commission, was founded in 1950, and the first 5-year plan in India was in 1951. And then now we are in the 11th 5-year plan, I suppose. So a series of 5-year plans. Now your point is your question is whether ideas were coming from the West to the East. Well, I do not know where you would put Soviet Union. Is it not West? Anyway, yes. So generally by West we always think of Western Europe. Europe excluding Russia, you know, United States, you know. But I would personally put Russia also in the West.